Well, it died.
Welcome to the May 12, 2017 edition of Colorado Inside Out Postgame, a special web-exclusive production here on Channel 12. Let's get a quick take on a newly released video showing immigration and custom enforcement agents arresting individuals in connection with immigration cases at the Lindsey-Flanagan Courthouse. The controversial video released by the Meyer law firm contradicts requests from the city of Denver not to make arrests at, quote, sensitive locations out of fear that immigrants may be reluctant to participate in the judicial process. Patty Calhoun from Westward, when we see things like this, is this bound to have political ramifications here in Colorado, despite it being triggered by a federal situation?
Well, sure, because we already have found out that Homeland Security keeps a list of who may or may not be sanctuary cities or sanctuary counties. And as we've talked about before here, part of the problem with rounding up some immigrants is constitutional rights. And some of these people, they are not bad hombres. They are not at that criminal level. And the problem is ICE has said they aren't doing this, but they are. And the Meyer law firm has discovered this on numerous occasions. They put out a video probably 2 months ago that they had access to. That was the reason Denver started really taking this seriously and talking about sanctuary and talking about actually changing some of the ordinances in Denver so that some actions wouldn't be considered criminal at a deportable level. But as we see from ICE, they don't stop. They keep going in and taking people away, and people are not now showing up as witnesses in some trials and in some cases for their own hearings.
David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School, one of our two esteemed attorneys on the show. Now we're hearing this video being released by a law firm, so I'm expecting that lawsuits will be involved. Does it get tricky because we're dealing with a federal agency at a local level, but there's lawyers involved? How does this all pan out?
I don't think it's a difficult thing legally, and I'd be surprised if there were lawsuits. Now, one guy was supposedly arrested with, they said, show me the warrant, and they were like, no, we won't, which actually in immigration court is not necessarily fatal to the case, but obviously they should show people who they're arresting when they have a warrant. Denver doesn't have the authority, I don't think, to prohibit federal agents from going on to City of Denver property. The sensitive places thing comes from a 2011 guidance memo to Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, which is still in effect, which says when you are arresting illegal aliens, which is certainly not all we shouldn't conflate illegal aliens with immigrants. This country is full of legal immigrants. When you're arresting illegal aliens, don't do it in general, don't do it in sensitive places such as churches and things like that, and it goes on to list several examples. It doesn't say these are the only sensitive places, but the examples it gives do not include courthouses. So I think ICE can say, first of all, this guidance memo is not legally binding in an enforceable court way, but even if it were, courthouses are not on the list.
Eric Sonman, political analyst, it seems that we're at least needing to get used to a different reality from what we used to, or this was a sanctuary area and this is how it all used to be. Doesn't seem to hold true now. Is that something we need to simply get used to? And if that's true, what kind of ramifications are we going to see on a local level about this new reality?
Well, we probably need to get used to it in the sense of it seems to be the new norm. Maybe we shouldn't get used to it in terms of being too comfortable with it or too living with it and not speaking up. My suspicion is that David is right from a legal point of view in terms of where ICE has authority. I'm not one of the two esteemed lawyers at the table and not even a non-esteemed lawyer at this table, but I suspect he's right. But the issue is, if ICE has the authority, does that mean ICE should use the authority? Those are two very different issues. I think when Donald Trump was elected president, most of this country, not all of this country, I mean, among the Democratic Party, there clearly is some constituency, I don't think it's a majority constituency, but some constituency that believes the border should just be open. Come on in, folks, wide open, or at least in that general direction. But I think most people bought into Trump's notion of getting rid of, quote unquote, the bad hombres. And if we're talking about people with warrants out for violent crime, I'm not talking about identity theft, and I don't dismiss the importance of identity theft, but I'm talking about violent crime. I don't think a lot of people are going to lose sleep to see those people deported back to their home countries. But from what I'm reading about ICE, whether it's here in the metro area or around the country, they are picking up a whole lot of people for whom that is not the description. and that they are people leading decent lives as immigrants, yes, under the table, if you will, illegal immigrants in this country, but they're raising families, they're raising kids for whom this country is the only country they ever knew. They're putting dinner on the table. They're getting those kids to school, and by breaking up those families and sending those moms and dads back, I think it's a disservice and it's inhumane.
Penfield Tate, attorney with QTAC Rock, also a longtime state lawmaker. You are our other, now previewed, esteemed lawyer at the table. What's your estimation of the legal situation when it comes to law firms releasing videos, and if there's any sort of potential for lawsuits or at least some sort of legal action?
Okay. Well, Eric is esteemed also. Let's clarify that, even though not a lawyer. You know, and I appreciate your question, Dominic, but I will tell you where we are and where we go is not going to be a function of law. And it sort of, I think, builds on Eric's point. We have, for lack of a better term, an alternate reality now, because what's now being manifested is the Trump administration putting their campaign rhetoric and promise into action. And what Americans are seeing is that the way it's being activated is not necessarily consistent with what they heard during the campaign. They thought that this was an administration that was going to enforce immigration laws to take care of the undocumented immigrants who are violent criminals. They didn't think it was going to be invoked to take law-abiding people and take them out of the country against their will away from their families. They didn't think it was going to be invoked by having ICE agents hang out at some schools and grabbing parents who are waiting there to pick up their kids, which is what's being reported in some cities. They thought the focus was going to be an expansion of what the Obama administration did of prioritizing violent people or offenders who are undocumented entrants into the country. But they're seeing now that that's not how the Trump administration is playing this out. So the question that is out there is how the American public responds and what they're willing to tolerate. And I think the videotape clip that we showed and some other instances that are getting out there are beginning to worry a number of Americans in terms of saying, you know, we want to be safe, and theoretically 99.9% of us are immigrants to this landmass we call the United States of America. But people are saying we want to be safe, we want to be protected, and we want to talk about controlling borders, but we don't just want a wholesale approach to just taking anybody who's undocumented and throwing them out of the country. And so at some point, I think you'll see more elected officials speaking up, more government officials speaking out. And like I said, this is not really a legal issue. This is more a prioritization by this administration. And we'll see how long they can maintain this activism.
That is all the time we have for Colorado Inside Out postgame this week. Leave us a comment and tell us what you think. For everyone here at CPT12.org, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks for watching.